So you want to start editing vlogs on iMovie, you've never used it before, or you're feeling a little bit lost. Well, I'm going to walk you through now the entire system that we use to edit pretty much every vlog we've ever made, which is a lot, which will hopefully teach you the software, only the things that are really important, so you'll speed up and produce high quality vlogs. Let's get going. So this is what we're going to teach you in iMovie. It includes things like jump cuts, so someone's talking to camera and then the camera jumps a little bit closer like that. You only need one camera to achieve this, it's all done in the edit. It's also going to include B-roll, so adding things to the top of it, and putting in text, cutting everything together and creating a really slick production. So the first thing you need to do is go and find iMovie. So if you're new to editing, I'll give you some advice. Prepare to get frustrated. This will not be something that's super duper easy to start off with. Things go wrong, but every time something goes wrong and you do start to get annoyed, just take a break and remember that this is all part of the learning experience. So let's dive in. First thing you want to do is hit create new, and it will look something like this. Now, there's different ways of importing media, but the first thing we want to do is just to check out how much storage you've got left on your computer. So if you click on the Apple key and then go to storage, hopefully you've got a decent amount of terabytes, plenty. Even if you've got a couple hundred gig, that's fine. You also want to check out your RAM, more the merrier really. Now if you think that you don't have much storage, or even if you do, the most sensible thing to do is move your iMovie library onto an external hard drive. So the iMovie playlist is basically where all the information of your edit is stored. You need to track down your movies folder and then find this here. It says iMovie library, and drag it onto an external hard drive. And you also want to keep your footage on another external hard drive. So you'll have the computer working as much as it can, as hard as it can, without getting clogged up, and then two external hard drives freeing it up. If you don't have either of them, it's not a problem. You can still get away with editing on iMovie. But you'll find that for longer projects, the computer won't slow down and you'll snag way less doing this. Let's import the files. If you click on this big button, import media, select the files you want, and there you are. It's as simple as that. You can just drag these files into the timeline if you like. For some reason, I don't actually like doing it that way. The other way of doing it is to find the footage you want and to just drag it into your timeline, like so. Now this is one video here. You might find you have multiple videos you want to put together, so you'll need to dump that onto your timeline as well and line it up into order. And we'll get to cutting those in a second. But before we do, it's probably worth teaching you a little bit of terminology. So the first thing, this is known as the A-roll. This is the narrative where the person's talking to camera. You then have what we call B-roll, and this is footage that goes on top of the person talking to camera. So if you want to break away to an image or some stock video or any sort of graphic, animation, anything like that, that goes on top. And what that will do is that will hide what's under the bottom. And then underneath that, you have where the soundtrack goes and sound effects. So if you want to put music into your vlog, this is where you'll put it in at the end. You'll also find that if you just dump in a video file underneath your actual video, it will only play the audio, it won't show the video. So it's quite handy if you just want to put in an audio track of someone talking or dub someone like that. And that way it gives you these three tracks. This is known as the timeline, where the video is, and this is known as the playhead, this thing here, which you'll need to know in a second when we get on to shortcuts. So shortcuts are important because if you don't use them, you'll be forever clicking your mouse, which is a pain. So the first shortcut I'm going to teach you is space. Hit the space bar and it will play your video. You're going to be hitting that a lot. The next shortcut is undo and redo. And then another one that's incredibly handy is Command B, and that's what's known as the blade. So if you hit Command, you position the playhead and you hit Command B, it cuts where the playhead is. By the way, if things are going a little bit slow, this is your loading box here. Now, as I mentioned earlier, if you don't have much space or much RAM, this might take a bit longer, and if your processing power is not great. So if you think this is taking too long and things like the waveform's not showing up, which is another bit of terminology for you. So you see these little up and down spikes, that's the audio waveform. And that means if you can't see it, your computer's struggling a bit, so you might just have to let it load. But if you can see it, then let's crack on with the editing because it makes this first bit really easy. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut out all the mistakes and we're going to line up the footage. So using this bar here, unless you're on a laptop where you can just zoom in with your fingers, if you just bring in the timeline a little bit closer, you can actually edit these without listening. So if you bring your playhead to the beginning and you want to be as close as you can get to this bit of sound here, and then you press Command B, hit Command B and delete that, and then we have a listen.
Timestamps.
So you want to be jumping in straight away.
Timestamps, a little bit of text.
All I'm looking for here is my first mistake or where I've stopped to make a cut. Because I didn't film this in multiple files, I just let the camera roll because it was pretty much usually only me filming myself. It's an easier way to do it. So we can see here in the footage I've got up to actually adjust the camera. So let's go back and listen.
Anyone who's already done or has been the great.
So we're going to put our playlist here, Command B, and then we're going to put it here right up against the waveform, Command B, and delete that. There we are.
Hold tight, I'll get to that in a second. The great thing is
See that? So I'll give you an example. If I space this out too much,
get to that in a second. The great thing is anyone.
There's too much pausing.
I'll get to that in a second. The great thing is
and it's a bit sloppy, so you want to get that in as close to that where the sound waveform starts.
Hold tight, I'll get to that in a second. The great thing is
There you are. So it's nice and fast. So let's keep going through the timeline here, and you can see on these images and the waveform where I'm likely to have made another mistake. Looks like I did alright so far on this one. Aha, we can see my first hand here. Okay. Yep, there's a mistake.
If YouTube gives videos.
So
the thing is, this will only.
So I want to find that.
Thing is, this will only.
So I'm looking for the same comment, and then Command B, and then Command B. Let's delete that.
Syncs up with the title of chapter 2, Happy Days, but again, not clickbait. The thing is, this will only.
The problem there was, see the camera? It went into autofocus, so I'll show you how to deal with things like that later.
The thing is, this will only really work. Watch it and think nonsense. Watch this video here.
Okay, so I'm at the end now. So if we go to the final bit of.
If you know, you know.
So we're going to get, like the others, we're going to get that playhead nice and close to the end, so it cuts off without leaving a gap. And that's it. So I did quite well presenting this one. Sometimes it takes me a lot longer, sometimes it's less. There's only actually 3 clips in this entire 4-minute video. Let's just do a check. So I can visually check by doing this and looking at the screen in the top right to make sure there was nothing I've missed out, where I'm actually readjusting the camera again. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is what's known as a jump cut. Now we might continue to do some more cuts in here to get rid of some of these deep breaths to speed it up. I'll give you an example of how to add some energy here doing this.
I mean, YouTube is never the same again.
Okay, so there's that deep breath. I could probably make it punchier now by Command B, cutting that bit out. Let's have a look.
Why it could mean YouTube is never the same again. The thing that's...
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a jump cut on this section here and bring it in a bit closer because I want to emphasize a point here, and it'll also give it a bit more energy and help keep the viewers interested using this bit of information here and bringing myself close to the camera. So in order to do it on here, you want to go up to this crop sign here and then crop to fill, and then you kind of just drag these in a bit. Now you don't want to pull these in too much because it will lose definition, so that's probably about enough of a jump, and you want to try and keep me as centered as possible. So that looks good.
No, here's the exciting bit.
See that? So let me just press undo and I'll show you what it looks like without a jump cut.
So now you know, here's the exciting bit.
Okay, and then let's put it in again as a crop.
You
see what it does there? So those little jump cuts, even though I've not made any mistakes along this bit, what I could do now is go through and cut out any breathing gaps that I feel are too long and do another jump cut.
Highlights it. Could chapters...
See there? I took a big glug. I don't like that particularly. So we're going to get it right, cut up against the waveform. Delete it.
Highlights it. Could chapters timestamps give Google more information as to what the content of your video contains?
So I'm going to cut that there. Doesn't need to be a long bit zoomed in. Go up to here again, crop to fill. Just drag that in. Get it centered.
And highlights it. Could chapters timestamps give Google more information as to what the content of your video contains?
So if you really want to add a lot of energy, you can jump back and forward loads.
Are these
and then make sure these are cut right to the start of where the narrative starts.
Are these timestamps going to be another chance to give YouTube and Google ranking signals?
And then we could do another one here if we wanted, because it's kind of at the end of a sentence.
Let me know what you think in the comments.
And then another one there, and then cut back some of that. So if you want to create energy, this editing will work with that. So that's it. So you go through using this zoom bar, unless you're lucky enough to have a laptop, and then you can just use the touchpad to zoom in and out with your hands. And you make as many cuts as you like. I wouldn't make too many, but you zoom in and zoom out and it creates this cool effect. Once you're happy with this and you think it's working well, we're going to move through and we're going to start adding B-roll and images. This is footage that goes over the top. Now, you might have shot something specifically to go over the top of your footage that works with the A-roll. You might just want to add images to help make your A-roll more interesting and more engaging. But either way, it works exactly the same. So locate the footage that you want to put on. So let's put a few clips here. Just going to pull these in. Now with B-roll, you might not want sound, so make sure you turn that down with this bar here. And then do your cuts.
The thing that sucks about it.
So I want to try and tell a little bit of a visual story here, where I'm putting down this.
Sucks about video and why blogs are...
There we are. So you can see that's as simple as it is, really. It's just exactly the same as adding the A-roll. So you just piece it in like that. If you have only access to, let's say, photos, there's a way of making them look a bit more interesting. Let's use this picture of Trump as an example. So
the bit you care about.
When you put a photo into iMovie, straight away it does what's known as a Ken Burns effect. And the Ken Burns effect is this.
You can just
there's a bit of motion. So you can see there's a bit of motion here. So click on the image you've got. You can turn this on or off if you want. So this is the Ken Burns option. You can leave it as fit, and this photo isn't actually big enough. So you might need to crop it, which means I have to come in a bit closer on Trump. And if I do that, what you'll find is that he fills the screen. But actually, the Ken Burns effect is pretty cool because it makes photos more interesting. So you can set your start with just this little bar here, and you can say I want it to zoom in. So then you click on the end, more on his face, and you can make it zoom in less, or you can make it zoom in a lot. I tend to find slight motions better than moving in quick. And if this clip here is very long, this will move a lot slower. If it's short, it'll move faster. So let's have a look. When you hit play, you can see it's very long and it's barely moving. If I speed it up, it moves a bit more. So that sort of level of motion's quite nice. That's really how you add B-roll. You just go through and you look at the parts where you want different images and so on, and put it on top. Text is great for keeping people interested, letting them know what's coming up next. It's also really good to help them take information. So if they hear it, they see someone presenting it, and they also read it on screen, it tends to sink in a lot better. So we're going to use what I like to call a text chapter. This kind of breaks the video up into sections, so it's almost like, you know, what's coming next. So this video is about using YouTube chapters, funnily enough.
Hold tight, I'll get to that in a second. The great thing is, anyone who's already been doing this for years...
So this section of the video would be called how to use a YouTube chapter, let's say, for example. So I want this text to appear on screen. So the first thing we're going to do is play around with our background. So I'm going to add a simple black background. You just put it in on the time like this, and then I'm going to click titles, and then I'm going to go to centered because I don't want anything cheesy. This is a pretty basic title, and just put it there. Not like Pixie Dusk. I mean, this might be your cup of tea, but it's not really me. So let's put it in. So there's a few glitches in iMovie at the moment. Now, I'm not a big fan of outlines and strokes and things like that, so I'm going to turn off the outline by pressing O there. Bold, I quite like. I'm going to delete this bottom line for the moment. And I want to change the font. Now, in order to do that, highlight your text. You've got a few options here. Otherwise, go down to show fonts and you'll have a lot more options. We use one called Poppins, so I'm going to click on that, black, and it should, there we are, fill in as Poppins black. Now, one problem I've got is this. There's a shadow, and I'm not a big fan of shadows. So if I use a different color background to start, you'll see what I mean. So the text has this sort of black outline around it, a slight shadow. To get rid of that, if you open your notebook or your text editor and type in what you want, then copy and paste that into here, it will go really small. You need to make the font bigger now, so let's go to 124. Let's make it bold. I have to go and do that all again. It's annoying. Go down to Poppins, black, has to be highlighted. There we are. and I want to change the color of the text. For some reason it's the wrong color, so let's make it white. And now we should have got rid of that shadow. There we are. Now there's not much you can do with this text, so let's leave it in the center of the screen. It's got this slight fade on, and there's a few things that you can do. So that's one way of adding text. The problem is someone talks, then there's a bit of no talking, and then it goes back to talking. So what I would rather do is try and get the text on screen here.
The thing is, anyone who's...
But that means putting your background over the top like that.
Hold tight, I'll get to that in a second. The great thing is, anyone who's already been doing this for years...
And actually this works really well because you're reading it and also so you know what's coming up and also in digesting the information straight away. So this is a technique I tend to use. Don't worry about little gaps. You can put in a small gap if you want, but I find it flows a lot nicer. So I'll go through this video now, copy and pasting it, and I will change whatever the chapter is about and I'll put it in the relevant position. So if you're trying to really brand this, you're going to have to spend a while playing with your text, and for most basic editing, just pick a background color that you like and a font that you like and just keep it consistent throughout the whole way. So that's how you add your text. You might want to add text over the top of Donald Trump or whoever your image is, and that's fine. So feel free to have a play around with any of these, see what you think works best. The next bit of text we're going to put in is what's called a lower third. So we're going to introduce the presenter. So my name's Ed, and I'm going to pop one of these in.
Timestamps, a little bit...
Ed. Business film brief. And it's the same process again. You can change the colour and the font and have these little introductions come in. The next thing we're going to look at is transitions. So I'm not a big fan of transitions. They often look pretty cheesy. You kind of want to use them when you're changing between locations or to show that time has passed, not just for the sake of them. But sometimes they're actually quite good for covering mistakes. So you see here I'm blurry because the camera's autofocus went. I need to sort of find a way of hiding this. The problem is I'm talking, so I can't just cut it out because it will cut me off. So sometimes transitions can help. So if we look at the slide right, we can put that in there.
Not clickbait. The thing is, this will only...
By the time it's landed, I've actually...
clickbait. The thing is, this will only...
The blur's gone and it's hidden. So there's that, or the other way is to put in another chapter and a bit of text, but it's not always relevant. So you can put it over the two adjoining like that, and then type in your text.
Not clickbait. The thing is...
So in editing, if you make mistakes, find a way to hide it with either B-roll or text and graphics. You can see now, editing vlogs like this are kind of layered processes. Layer 1, A-roll, layer B, B-roll, layer C or 3, I'm using alphabet and numbers here, is adding text and graphics. Then the next one is looking at the footage itself and making some adjustments. So if you've shot on auto on your camera, hopefully you won't have to do many, and if the lighting's good, hopefully nothing's too dark or too blown out. If it's too blown out, there's not a huge amount of stuff we can do. So let's look at basic color correction. So if you click on your clip here, and then you go up to these little blobs, you can add filters if you want, kind of like Instagram. So you can create different looks. It's romantic, it's nice and blurry, old world, and really they're all a bit cheesy and rubbish, I find. You can flip it around, it's kind of weird. Oh, that looks pretty good, I like it the other way around. Have you ever noticed how you look like a different person the other way around? Anyway, black and white, vintage, things like that. I'm going to press cancel on that because I'm not interested in them. You can go here to the colour palette. So let me just explain this to you. These blobs mean different things. So the shadows, you can make the shadows darker or lighter. Now we don't want to go too dark, but it is nice to have a bit of contrast. So I'm just going to pull it down a tad. Now here you have mid-tones. So this is usually your skin tones, things like that. So if you bring it down too dark, bring it up a bit higher. And then you can bring the contrast points between the two. And then brightness, you can see that's too blown out, and otherwise it gets a bit freaky looking. There's not a huge deal you can do with these. Things like Final Cut, you can go crazy, but there's not a massive amount of saving you can do. You've also got this wand option here, which auto does everything for you. Can sometimes make it slightly different, but that seems good enough. It's making all the corrections. There's also saturation, so you can go black and white, you can pump it up a bit so your blues and start popping and your skin tones pop, everything pops, and then you can go warmer and colder. But I think for now we're just going to leave it here. So it's down to taste and preference a lot of the time, and style. If it's on auto, I wouldn't spend too much time changing this, but again, if you've filmed and there's some mistakes in it, it's going to be kind of hard to save anything that's too dark or too bright. So when in doubt, cover it up with something else. So the next thing we want to look at is audio. So there are some basic audio adjustments that you can do to this. If there's a bit of background noise, you can try and take that down. This does tend to make people sound like they're underwater though. A little bit's okay, it's never going to save you. I don't really need any right now. You can also use the equalizer too, so I might want to put up more bass on this video.
The creators to put the information in so they work.
Or reduce it and put in more treble and so on. Kind of like you're filming, you can't save that much with audio, so you want to set it up right in the shoot. Right, so we're going to check out some backing tracks now. So let's find your song. That'll do for now. You can just drag that in. Once you've located it, you can see here it's super loud, and we don't want it to compete with volume, so we need to bring it right down.
Timestamps, a little bit of text you can add to.
So yeah, you really need to make sure you're not competing with your voice here. So you can fade in using these little blobs at the end and fade out. You can come up to the sound equalizer. There's not a huge amount that you can do with this really. You can lower the volume of other clips that it's underneath, which is not really wise in this situation. So let's turn that off. And that's about it really. If you want to, as you can see, your song is not very long and you need it to loop, then you need to beat match.
The thing that sucks.
So you'll need to paste it in and then overlap in places to get it working. But yeah, just make sure that you're not clashing with your own sound there. And now we want to be looking at quality control, so checks. So this is the point where you watch your video, and here's the things to look out for. Cuts, are they nice and tight? Is it giving your content energy? How are you cutting in the right place? So you don't want to just cut mid-sentence, it needs to be mid-pause. Have you removed deep breaths and any mistakes, things like that? Have you added text? Are there typos in the text? Does your B-roll make sense with the narrative, or is it random? And is everything lined up and working right? And this bit could either take 5 minutes, it could take a few hours, it's down to you really. And then once you're happy with your video and the way it looks, you can export it. So you want to go to File, Share, you can send it straight to YouTube if you want. Personally, I don't tend to do that. I tend to find it glitches a lot actually. So I'm just going to export the file. And we can name it. Video and audio resolution. We don't want to shoot in 4K on this. I think most computers would really struggle. So 1080p. This is going to change the file size. So low quality. You can see it's a much smaller file. I'm going to keep it on high. So the file here is 594 megabyte. I try to get everything below 100. So I'll show you how to do that in a minute. But click on faster or better quality. I'm going to click on better quality for the export here. And I'm going to hit next. And save it to my desktop. Depending on how fast your computer is, try not to get too annoyed with it. If you want to do it on straight to YouTube, fine. Same again, share, YouTube. You want to make it 1080p because they're making it 720p to start. Select the category, private, and so on, and then hit next and sign in. But yeah, I do find this mucks up a lot. So now download some software called Handbrake, handbrake.fr. I'll put the link in the description. Open it up, find your video, and now we're going to compress it. So you need to check out these settings here. So leave it in fast, 1080p 30. I'm assuming you've shot it in 30. If not, you're going to want to change that to how you have shot it. A lot of the time defaults on phones and so on are in this setting, so that's not a problem. Select the file you want it to come out as, an MP4. Click on video, average bitrate. This is basically a quality thing, 6000 is fine. I wouldn't go any lower than that anyway. Have a look at the preview, have a look at settings, and make sure all of these are 0. Basically, if that's 10, it will crop something off the side. So just rename the edit because it's going to be the same as the MP4 and then hit start. And what this will do, it will crush it down to something that uploads way quicker to YouTube and is a lot easier to manage. So if you're using it on other platforms too, it will speed things up just taking this step. And that's about it. That's how you edit a video. Try not to panic, learn some shortcuts. I'll put the link in the description below, but following that system is enough for most people when they are making vlogs. We don't do many tutorials like this. Found that useful, do give us a like and we'll make some more if it's quite popular. If you've got any questions, leave them in the comments. If there's anything you think I've missed out, other people need to know, leave that in the comments. Otherwise, watch this video here, which might inspire you to upgrade to Final Cut Pro or check out this latest release right here. Thanks for watching.